I am no fan of Malcolm Turnbull. In fact, I think he lost so much ground for the Liberal Party. The party is still trying to redefine what it stands for and communicate that message. But there was something Turnbull wrote in his autobiography 2 years ago about his successor, Scott Morrison, that has stuck in my mind. And in the past few days, today in particular, it's turned out to be chillingly accurate. Turnbull wrote, "Scott is a control freak. And I'd seen before in the ballots in 2015 how he'd publicly vote one way while ensuring his supporters voted the other way. I think what has been revealed in the past couple of days proves beyond doubt that Scott Morrison, before and during his prime ministership, was indeed a terrible control freak." Now, the revelations published from extracts out of a new book titled Plagued, and similar revelations uncovered today in the Australian newspaper, are inexplicable. The PM secretly engineered a virtual swearing-in process to become some kind of joint health minister, which to some may be understandable in the context of a pandemic. But at the same time, he also secretly appoints himself as finance minister without the actual finance minister, Matthias Cormann, knowing a single thing about it. Even National Party leader David Littleproud seemed gobsmacked today by the news.
I think it's pretty ordinary. We should have respected that process, should have respected the forum of Cabinet to articulate and argue out ideas and policy areas and come to a consensus. So I can't answer that, and those are questions that Scott Morrison will obviously answer in the fullness of time.
And even worse, what's emerged today is that in April last year, at a time when Morrison and his Resources Minister Keith Pitt were at loggerheads over an offshore gas project, he asked the Governor-General again to sign off on another role, this time to adopt the Resources, Industry, Science and Energy portfolio. Why? Well, in December last year, Morrison rules against the gas project, which would appear to be a terribly cynical move to control the decisions regularly made by Cabinet ministers. Did he not trust his ministers? Now, the current Prime Minister is seeking advice as to whether these covert events were even legal.
Well, this is extraordinary and unprecedented. Let's be very clear. Australians knew during the election campaign that I was running a shadow ministry. What they didn't know was that Scott Morrison was running a shadow government.
Why do you keep something like that secret, especially from the ministers who've been so badly usurped? We'll find out what Keith Pitt thought of being treated like a mushroom shortly. But whatever happened to transparent government? It is anything but. It fails every pub test for honesty there is. Now, the Governor-General released a statement today to say that the signing off on multiple portfolios was a normal process under Section 64 of the Constitution. It has not gone down too well with the man who was Morrison's deputy at the time, Nationals MP Barnaby Joyce.
We don't have a presidential form of government. We have a cabinet system of government. And if you don't like the work a certain cabinet minister's doing, then you can talk to them about it. And obviously, they have the right to threaten to sack them, or you can sack them. But I think it's very bad practice when a Prime Minister or any other senior minister starts having ultimate say over another person's portfolio.
And Barnaby was not told about Morrison adopting the Resources portfolio, despite the fact that a Nationals MP was being usurped. Barnaby knew nothing about it. And he is dead right in what he said there. This was the behaviour of a presidential-style government, not one we've seen govern in Australia ever before. But this extraordinary behaviour falls into the same category as the way Morrison controlled a large number of pre-selections earlier this year, especially in the state of New South Wales. Remember that? After various dysfunctional attempts to decide candidates, the New South Wales Liberal Party executive was overruled and the Prime Minister moved in. He and numbers man Alex Hawke appointed no less than 8 personally selected candidates for 8 New South Wales seats. They left it so late, though, that it gave most of those candidates almost no chance of being ready or able to win the seats. So it was appallingly handled. It was the greatest exercise in pre-selection control freak behaviour by a federal government in living memory. And now this.
This is a sort of tin pot activity that we would ridicule if it was in a non-democratic country.
Now, as for the Governor-General, did he also have a responsibility to report on these secret ceremonies to the Queen? Now, whether he did or not, Sky News understands that the appointment of the former Prime Minister to these additional appointments was not communicated to the palace.
It is unbecoming, it was cynical, and it was just weird that this has occurred. And Australians will be scratching their head today knowing that the government that they thought was there wasn't actually the Australian government at all.
Weird is a very good word to use for what we now know. And do we know about the other portfolios that he may have adopted? No. Malcolm Turnbull's political nous has never been sharp. In fact, his actions and words often illustrate the opposite. But his comments about Scott Morrison being a frequent control freak seems to be spot on the money. The question which now needs to be answered is why were those controlling moves to adopt 3 additional ministerial roles kept so secret? Maybe he felt that COVID could have taken out key ministers and he needed to be the backup. Now, that is a very weak argument, but at least it's an argument. If it was so above board, why did Scott Morrison keep it so secret for so long? The secrecy itself has no defence. We have a parliament and a cabinet for good reason in this country. Such covert authoritarian behaviour just flies in the face of what the public expects.